Teaching and leading in schools is a tremendous endeavor. Educators carry large emotional burdens in the work of caring for our country's most precious asset, our children. And yet, often we don't spend enough time voicing the emotional challenges of being an educator, much less giving educators tools to care for themselves. As educators, we had a life-changing spring and summer filled with stress and change. And as we return to school this fall, we know that educator stress is even more compounded by the many unknowns ahead of us. That's why the TEA has launched Project Restore in this trauma-informed training video series, which is designed to address these extraordinary and unprecedented needs and connect you to relevant science and strategies that can help you address your own emotional needs, as well as the needs of your students and colleagues. My name is Amber, and I'll be guiding you through our learning today. The second video in our series focuses on the way the last few months have impacted the lives of educators. Here, we will begin to understand your personal experiences with trauma and loss caused by COVID-19. Gain awareness of triggers that lead to stress for you as an educator, and learn strategies for reducing stress and enhancing self-care. In our last video, we introduced you to the roller coaster we've all been on for the past few months. From the loss, stress, and fear caused by the global pandemic and the shuttering of school buildings across America to the societal issues the country has faced, the emotional burdens of the last few months have been heavy, and educators have carried this burden in unique ways. In many ways, all of our normals have been stripped away, leaving stress, grief, overwhelm, and often exhaustion. Today, we'll spend time bringing your internal world to the surface, while exploring how you can provide yourself with the care you usually provide for others. Our hope is that through this video, you feel seen and valued, and that you find ways to fill up after giving so much to your students, families, and colleagues. First, let's think again about the impacts of stress we explored earlier. Remember our trauma and stress iceberg, which shows us the most visible indicators of trauma and stress? These indicators usually show up through physical and behavioral symptoms and can be thought of as stress residue, reminding you that even though the stressor might have passed, the stress has not left you. These symptoms are our body letting us know we need to tend to these areas of our pain or depletion. In the last video, we reflected on how many of these indicators you experienced in the last 6 months. Today, we're going to reflect on some of the experiences that have created stress for you. To warm up, consider how many of these stressors you've experienced since the COVID-19 crisis began. Sudden end of in-person school, loss of daily routine, loss of childcare, loss of or change to work, loss of safety or well-being, loss of milestone like a wedding or graduation, separation from family, friends, and neighbors, increased job stress, stressful encounters with students, worry about students and families, increased financial stress, increased parenting stress, providing care for a sick or high-risk loved one, fears about pandemic affecting health, illness or loss of a loved one. How many did you check from the list? What was missing from this list for you? Often, we are tempted to dismiss, compare, or discount our experiences, blocking ourselves from the opportunity to be compassionate and empathetic towards ourselves with statements like, "At least I didn't," or "It's not that bad." Today, we want to invite you down a different path, one where you can name, reflect on, and provide care to yourself in these difficult experiences and feelings. To guide your quiet, written self-reflection, take your paper and write out the following sentence stems. I lost, I miss, I was most stressed and overwhelmed when. I lost my sense of normalcy when I wasn't able to help my students with special learning needs adjust to virtual learning. I miss my students Many of them went dark once virtual school started, and I haven't been able to keep regular contact. I was most stressed when I was teaching and taking care of my toddler at the same time. Feel free to expand upon each sentence, taking the space to explore your experience, explaining what happened and what it was like for you. Take as much time as you'd like to complete this exercise. Simply push pause and restart the video when you are ready. Science shows us that simply naming our feelings and experiences is one way to reduce the impact of stress. Dr. Dan Siegel coined a powerful phrase to describe this effect: name it to tame it. As you name your experiences, notice the way that your body and your brain respond. Do you feel a sense of relief, of having unloaded a burden? Do you feel more clear-headed? Hopefully by now you have a clearer idea of what you've been going through these past several months. Now, we'll dig even deeper to identify your current feelings and needs associated with these experiences. The following tool, what we call a resilience map, will help you to bridge gaps in your resilience by identifying unmet needs you may have. Here's how it works. First, draw a chart with 3 columns, labeling column 1 stressor, column 2 feeling, and column 3 need, like this. Now, take a few minutes to fill in 3 stressors that feel particularly relevant to you today. This could be not being able to see friends in person, or balancing childcare needs with work. Then, use the following lists to identify the feelings and needs you have for each stressor. To aid you in unpacking all of this, use this list of common feelings and needs. Take as much time as you'd like to fill out your chart now. Simply push pause and restart the video whenever you are ready. What feelings did you identify? What needs? Notice whether or not this is the first time you've set aside time during this season to find words for your feelings and needs. During times of stress and crisis, we often put our heads down and just keep going in order to survive. But this can result in unacknowledged emotions and needs, which can lead to physical symptoms, impacting our overall well-being. Fear and anxiety about COVID-19 and what could happen can be overwhelming and cause strong emotions. As a result, coping with stress and self-care will be paramount as you transition back to school this fall. Before we dive into developing coping strategies, let's explore how triggers work. Let's review what we've covered so far. In this chapter, we reflected on our own personal experiences of stress and our own emotions and needs related to recent stressors. In the next chapter, we will explore how some of these experiences and emotions may continue to show up in our day-to-day life. Triggers are situations, events, people, places, or sensory experiences that might create a disproportionate emotional response. We previously learned that our brains become extra sensitive to triggers in an attempt to give us additional protection where we need it most. In the example of a person traumatized by a snake bite, the brain learns to identify anything snake-like as a snake, just in case. Here is a more close-to-home example. Meet Sarah, an educator who is also the mother of an infant who, like many of you, lost her childcare support when the pandemic hit. The experience of adjusting to teaching virtually while caring for an infant triggered a stress response in Sarah day after day. She lost sleep, felt perpetually behind at work, and was worried and overwhelmed most days. Sarah's partner is a business owner who has been under tremendous pressure at work and has been less available to help and support Sarah. In addition, Sarah was cut off from key sources of emotional support, including her parents and her religious community. Even her usually tight-knit team at work was so spread thin that they have very little contact with one another during lockdown. This situation created anxiety, frequent tears, loss of appetite, and exhaustion for Sarah, 4 indicators of overwhelming stress. Imagine yourself in a day in the life of Sarah, returning to work. When Sarah returns to work, some of her triggers might include sudden changes in school routines or policies, trying to conduct Zoom class with a baby crying in the background, feeling exhausted but realizing she has important emails to respond to. In this example, the brain has wired together the feelings of powerlessness and anxiousness that Sarah had when she lost her childcare, with any subsequent experience that even vaguely reminds her of this, turning what would, under ordinary circumstances, be manageable changes for Sarah, like an email from an administrator about schedule changes, into overpowering reminders of that earlier stress, of that unmanageable situation. Now, take a minute to reflect on potential triggers that may impact you. To help you come up with this, think of any times in the last couple of weeks where you may have been overcome with sudden, strong emotions or knee-jerk reactions. Then, backwards map to figure out what prompted those. Your reaction in that moment was your stress response, but the situation that caused it was your trigger. Take as much time as you'd like to complete this exercise. Simply push pause and restart the video whenever you are ready. In this chapter, we identified that triggers, or reminders of past emotional distress, can impact you in your daily life. In the next chapter, we will create a plan for anticipating and addressing daily stressors. What to do then with these feelings that create stress and trigger us? How can we move ourselves towards resilience when so many circumstances are out of our control? How can we build a protective buffer between ourselves and the stressors we have faced and will continue to face? For this final section, we're going to focus on building what we'll call a protective buffer plan. This plan will help you to reduce stress by addressing gaps between the stress you're facing and your ability to tolerate that stress. First things first, though, how will you know when you need your plan? Here's a scale from 0 to 100 to help you decide. 100 is when you're feeling the following: safe, calm, social, regulated, ready to take on the world. And 0 is when you feel completely depleted, exhausted, overwhelmed, alone, and even paralyzed and numb in the face of stress. Most of us feel somewhere in between, of course. Although, since the pandemic, many educators describe feeling much closer to the bottom of the scale, or at a 0. What is most important is that you are able to check in with yourself and notice when you are moving towards 60 or below. 60 is when one might begin to feel a bit worn down, a bit anxious, or a bit depleted. Below 60 is your little nudge to take steps to care for yourself. Your decrease in well-being may be connected to a trigger or a new stressful circumstance. But in any case, by catching it early, you can activate your protective buffer before even getting below 25. Sometimes, of course, life throws so much stress at us that we find ourselves unable to build the buffer we need. Even in this situation, noticing and naming that we are at a 0 increases the likelihood that we can reach out for help and take steps towards restoration. What are those steps towards restoration? Before helping you to build a personalized plan, we'd like to introduce you to the 3 R's of resilience: routines, rest, and relationships. Each R provides you with practices that can help you lessen stress and begin to feel more seen, safe, and soothed. R number 1 is routines. Reestablishing routines is an important way we help our internal world adapt to external chaos. By providing a regulating routine for ourselves, we can send cues to our body that we have some level of agency in the world. A daily regulating routine is a perfect example of creating a rhythm for yourself. Some practices that can be built into your established rhythms include time for movement, particularly during stress. Listening to a walking meditation on a mindfulness app or practicing yoga can be powerful. Time to play, time to focus, and of course, as we'll talk more about in a moment, time to connect and rest. For Sarah, establishing a regular sleep schedule and a daily check-in with her partner were simple steps to help increase regulation. Every day, Sarah made sure the following were incorporated into her routine: short morning walk, midday mindfulness break, and after dinner, check in with her partner. Our number 2 is rest. Rest includes, of course, sleep. The pandemic has caused widespread sleep disruption and deprivation because of factors like stress, anxiety, and heavy workloads at a time when, ironically, our bodies likely need more sleep than ever to deal with the depleting effects of worry and stress. Getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night is key to helping your body bounce back. In addition to sleep, whenever possible, incorporate quiet and solitude for reflecting. This might look like taking a slow walk while listening to a walking meditation on a mindfulness app during a break. Taking 5 minutes per day to breathe slowly in a dark room, breathing in replenishment and breathing out stress and demands. Turning off screens in time for an earlier bedtime. Carving out time for quiet reflection through journal writing at your desk or during lunch. For Sarah, this looked like prioritizing her rest and sleep schedule to include time for 8 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Taking slow, restorative walks with her infant in a baby carrier each evening before bedtime. Our number 3, and perhaps the most important R, is relationships. Relationships with others are key to restoration and resilience. Attachment expert and author of The Social Neuroscience of Education, Dr. Louis Cozolino, describes the crucial role relationships play in human flourishing. The individual neuron or a single human brain does not exist in nature. Without mutually stimulating interactions, people and neurons wither and die. From birth until death, each of us needs others who seek us out, show interest in discovering who we are, and help us to feel safe. Thus, understanding the brain requires knowledge of the healthy, living brain embedded within a community of other brains. Relationships are our natural habitat. This includes our relationship with our families, our students, and our colleagues. Feeling safe and seen in a few key relationships brings protective benefits to our life, and these secure relationships are so often the source of post-traumatic growth, the restoration and flourishing that can take place after stress and trauma. During COVID-19, our natural habitat, relationships, has been significantly disrupted. So restoration in this season has to include re-establishing relationships so that we again feel safe, seen, and soothed. This may look like giving and receiving empathy, perhaps in a virtual or in-person support group with your peers. Relationship rituals such as saying, "I love you," or sharing a meal. Creatively connecting if in-person contact isn't safe. For example, playing games over Zoom. Reaching out and asking for help. Play, laughter, and shared joy with loved ones. Attending individual or group therapy with a licensed professional. For Sarah, this looked like setting up weekly phone calls with her 2 closest colleagues at school, attending virtual therapy with a licensed professional, and cooking with her family. Now you know the 3 R's of resilience and specific practices to help you address stress. It is also important to reflect on whether or not you're using pseudo-regulators to cope with stress when activated or depleted. Pseudo-regulators are activities or substances that temporarily bring relief, but eventually, and sometimes quickly, create more stress. On the flip side, when something is truly regulating to you, it can calm and ground you for several hours without creating other harmful effects. As you build personal practices to regulate, focus on what serves your body and creates energy, rather than what may further dysregulate or deplete you. Now, it's time to build your own protective buffer plan. Grab a piece of paper and draw a circle. Divide the circle into 3 pie pieces like this. For each piece of the pie, brainstorm practices that you want to incorporate into your life related to each R: routines, rest, relationships. Remember, we all have a unique stress story, unique feelings, unique needs, and thus unique protective buffer plans. You can also refer back to your resilience map to see if there are any needs that you would like to address. Take as much time as you'd like to build your protective buffer plan. Simply push pause and restart the video whenever you are ready. One final note. Sometimes we find ourselves in moments where we can't access all of our protective buffers, but need to calm down. Thinking back to Sarah's story, imagine she is in the middle of teaching a virtual class and her baby wakes up early from a nap, but her partner doesn't hear the crying right away. Sarah is reminded of the stress from last spring, and immediately she is triggered. Feelings of frustration flood her body and she feels sick to her stomach. In her mind, she thinks, "I need help," while her students stare back, waiting for the next activity. How can Sarah de-escalate in the moment? How can she self-regulate? In these moments, the 3 R's still apply, with maybe a little more creativity required. Here are just a few ideas for de-escalation. She can take slow, deep breaths, even inviting her students into a breath break with her. Her breath is like an emergency brake, signaling to her body to slow down. She can send a quick SOS text to her partner. This might help her to feel seen and soothed. If students are working quietly, she can spend a few minutes journaling her feelings and needs using the name it to tame it method. Because everyone is different, take a moment to reflect on what other strategies you would use in a moment of being triggered in the classroom. Write the strategy down and keep it near to where you do most of your teaching. This is your reminder that you have an emergency brake when you need it. You did a lot of amazing reflection work today. Hopefully, you're feeling more aware of what you've experienced, what you're feeling, and of course, what you're needing to move forward. We encourage you to keep building your protective buffer plan and to share it with a few loved ones. And of course, when you find yourself dipping below 60, pull it out to remind yourself that you are worthy and in need of care and relationships, especially during stress. Let's review what we've covered in this chapter. We increased our self-awareness about our levels of stress and learned that we can use routines, rest, and relationships to buffer stress and build resilience. As we close out, let's review key concepts from this video. We learned that naming our stress experiences and related feelings and needs is an essential step to addressing stress and building resilience. We learned that without identification and management, trauma and stress triggers can create a cycle of dysregulation, deepening the impacts of stress over time. We learned that routines, rest, and relationships are key to restoration and regulation. We hope you can join us for our next video, which will equip you with powerful tools to help address student stress. To close out, your action step is simple. Send a text of gratitude to someone who has helped you to feel safe, seen, and soothed in the last few months. Someone who has been supportive of you during the stressful or challenging time. This could look as simple as, "Allie, thank you for checking in on me lately. It's been such a hard time, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life." Thanking and connecting with this person can be a powerful reminder of the neuroplastic power of relationships.